Today's episode is part 2 of our special look into Nirvgen's groundbreaking NVG-291 clinical trial. We continue our deep dive into the real-life experiences of spinal cord injury survivors, stepping into the unknown of nerve regeneration research. We're joined by Lizzie Fuller, another spinal cord injury survivor and participant in the Nirvgen trial. With honesty and clarity, Lizzie walks us through her experience as part of the chronic cohort, the process of qualifying, the support of the care team, and the signs of improvement she witnessed in herself and others. We also explore the visionary science behind NVG-291, including the pioneering work of Dr. Jerry Silver, and what this emerging therapy and this trial, which has recently shown efficacy in the FDA trials in both strength and functionality, what it might mean for the future of spinal cord healing. Stay tuned. I am blessed to introduce you to Lizzie Fuller. Lizzie is a spinal cord injury survivor, mom of 3 boys, and one of the early participants in Nirvgen's chronic phase NVG-291 clinical trial, a cutting-edge study aimed at promoting neural regeneration after paralysis for those 1 to 10 years out from acute spinal cord injury. Reports worldwide have been released on the efficacy of this drug, and today, Lizzie will be sharing her experience with us, offering a first-hand account and insight into what it was like behind the scenes of the trial as she underwent experimental treatment with Nirvgen's 291 at the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab in Chicago. Welcome, Lizzie.
Thank you very much.
It is a joy to have you here, and I am wondering, before we dive into this exciting outcome of the Nirvgen trial, can we go back and understand the origin and nature of your spinal cord injury? I know it was back in 2016. Can we begin there to give us a bit of context?
Sure, Louise. Yeah, our injury stories are pretty intense. And it's a sacred thing for me to share this with you. And I share this with you because I'm addressing my community who will truly understand this is not for shock value or entertainment. It's about the transformation of a life. In 2016, in early January, I decided to go out with a friend to Chicago. We were going to see a movie at an Omnimax theater and then spend the day walking around the beautiful city of Chicago. But the vehicle slipped on ice. It rolled several times. Most of the damage was on the passenger side of the car. And I nearly died.
Yeah, just taking that in. Thank you for being willing to go back there with us on this sacred story.
But, I didn't die, Louise. I was injured at the C5 vertebra, and I was swollen to the C4. It was really cold. I was upside down. The vehicle was on top of me, and it was leaking fluids. In the vehicle right behind me, there was a wonderful man named Anthony, accompanied with his female friend who was a nurse. And they stopped and began giving assistance at the scene, and there was a third car, and also a nurse who had just gotten off work at Riley Children's Hospital.
Incredible.
And they directed traffic around the scene, and people wanted to remove me from the car. But Anthony said, "Do not touch this woman. She's severely injured." And the nurses got my driver's license out of my purse and said, "Her name is Lizlie." And they said, "Hey, Lizlie." And they regained consciousness. And I told them, I have 2 children in the house. Their names are Warren and Charles. Their father can't raise them. And they said, okay, Leslie. And I've told other people this, but I had a mental image of a beautiful golden box that was leaking perfume. And I knew this was my life. And when it was completely gone, I would be dead. And I didn't even have enough energy to be afraid. But I just thought, I did not complete this. I have not raised my children. But you know what, Louise? There was already a Lifestar helicopter in the area. It landed on the interstate. Some firefighters came. They put warm air inside the car. They yelled, "We got a pulse!" And then they said, "We're going to get this car off of you, Leslie." And they cut me off out of the vehicle. They airlifted me to the ICU. And, you know, I just thought things are getting better and better.
The angels that were all in perfect alignment when this vehicle slipped on the ice. Anthony having the knowledge to know that someone who may have broken their neck should not be moved, if at all possible, until someone professional can do so. What a gift.
Yes. Well, my mom shares that viewpoint. I've also said, really would have been a gift if I could have gone and seen the movie that day in Chicago. But yeah, that's right. You know, another thing that really resonates with me are the Iliad and the Odyssey, right? Odysseus just wants to get back home and see his beautiful spouse and raise his son. But he keeps having mishaps and interruptions. And really, we are all on that great heroic journey. And we should not wish to change places with anyone. I'm on that journey, and you're on that journey, Louise. And so is everyone we know. And yes, people come into our life and help us, and they are our angels.
What an analogy for the heroic journey. So, Leslie, after having that car pulled off of you, can you give us a taste of the rest of your experience before we dive into what propelled you into the Nirvgen trials?
Well, I was airlifted to a trauma hospital, and I'm entering the theater of the ICU. And some of the people in the ICU are not going to make it. And that's what they're concerned about, your mental acuity. And are you going to make it? But my experience from the first hour of being injured is the inversion of a bell-shaped curve where normally most of the people you meet are kind of neutral. Hi, how are you? How's the weather? And a few people are kind of negative and a few people are positive too. Your world, people go one way or the other where it seems like they remove a mask and say, you know what, I think you're through, you're finished, I don't see any hope here. I'm here to tell you that things are over. And then the other individuals are like, I love you. I'm so happy you're here. How can I help you? You are looking better today. I see the possibility. And for one reason or another, the world sometimes does not see you as a peer when you have a spinal cord injury. You are in another category. So, yes, I asked when I would be going into surgery. I asked someone to take down my father's phone number. And then I heard a nurse say, she's repeating herself. And I said, excuse me, I just want you to contact my dad. And if you had been injured, wouldn't you want to go to surgery? And then another person said, Leslie, I've called your dad, and we're trying to see if the doctor is available. But yeah, from that moment on, I constantly had to battle this attitude that I was incompetent and unintelligent because I had been injured. And it was a real shock to my system, equal to the physical shock.
May I pause on that? So here it was almost 10 years ago, and you're sharing this with us, which is a refrain that we hear often of those who are newly injured. And it's one that I want to offer up with compassion to the medical community who are really have your best interest at heart and are trying to care for you and do their assessments, but usually not trained in the emotional, psychological, spiritual experience that accompanies the physical trauma. And, just to keep giving your father's telephone number, or sometimes it can be, they're cutting off your clothes, and saying something like that over and over. And they're assuming that someone is incompetent or deranged or needs to even be narcotized. And it's simply the experience of trauma.
Well, yes. I mean, might we be forgiven for being a little disheartened?
Yes.
It was a big day. So if we have a little word retrieval or something's going on that doesn't correlate with a brain injury, it means, wow, this was kind of a huge day. I think the other thing that I've talked to people in the medical community about, Louise, is I understand when you contact family, you want them to come straight to the hospital. You don't want them to stop off for a bucket of fried chicken. But don't fill them with fear. Just say, this is a serious situation and we are absolutely giving them our best care. But try to avoid making it sound, the worst case scenario. Or also when you interact with someone, don't tell them they will never feel or move any part of their body, that their life is over, they need to compromise or accept, that their universe has shrunk. Because you don't know that that's true. That's right. We don't need to tell people they're going to be on Dancing with the Stars. Neither do we need to tell them that they're going to live in a nursing home and that they will never, move any part of their body or feel anything, because the most negative scenario is as unlikely as the most positive scenario.
And if we pause on that, how powerful it is for all of our listeners to take that in, whether they are the friends who were equally overwhelmed, perhaps, and just couldn't come around any longer, or didn't know how to interact, or the medical professionals who think that they do know what will happen in the future. And indeed, as we talk about Nirvgen and all the exciting things happening now in spinal cord injury, it is just not the case to tell someone that their loved one will never move or walk again or have to live their life in a nursing home. It's just not true anymore, potentially.
Yes. And Louise, the impetus for all our wonderful discoveries or our wonderful works of art, the impetus of creativity is imagining things that don't exist yet. And that is faith. And that's kind of crazy. It's courageous. It's the impetus of discovery, building a boat and sailing away. And I felt that I had all these crazy optimistic feelings within myself. And in the rehab hospital, they felt this was a sign of a brain injury, and they wrote down, Leslie does not understand the seriousness of her condition. She's optimistic and happy. And they took one of my friends aside, Anita, and we're very worried about Leslie. She's really happy. And she said, this is her baseline personality. And honestly, I think there is hope for her. And Louise, I was really chagrined that I was made to go to speech therapy. And I said, this is not a brain injury. I'm just freaking annoying. Okay. I really am a pretty happy person. I'm sorry this is rubbing you the wrong way. But I'm like, why? Why am I being treated like my optimism or my attempts to do more is a pathology? This is the desire to live.
Almost as if that desire to live now being treated as a pathology is because of the assessors, the cognitive dissonance that's happening when they see a body that is paralyzed and the shock. And then, therefore, how can someone be articulating and be so positive? And it just doesn't go together in the mindset of an assessor, potentially, at least from what you're describing. How extraordinary.
Yes. Why would we be the only diagnosis? That there's never any hope. I mean, I know the Egyptians said paralysis is the disease without any cure, but we've learned a few things in medical science since then. Like, I wasn't born under an unlucky star or cursed by a witch. I have a spinal cord injury, and I'm pretty sure that medical science can arrive at some advancements and breakthroughs. And that's why when I found out about the Nirvgen trial on Reddit, leading me to the work of Dr. Jerry Silver, I just felt so much joy in my heart.
Jerry Silver is extraordinary. And for listeners who might not know of his background, we both are probably familiar with it. And he was not always a rock star. He was a visionary, though. Do you know a bit about his background and reading also about him as you referenced?
Well, I identified with Dr. Silver's scientific journey. He had shared that part of his drive growing up with a Jewish mother was she would tell him, this is so, and you have to do things a certain way. And he would say, why? And then he would try to research and I guess counter that. I guess he gave his mother a hard time. But then in science, he became interested in the eye. Why does it develop a certain way? What in embryology allows the eye to, why don't we have bizarre neurons sticking out the front of our eye, which would render them unusable? And he discovered that there's a mechanism so they grow in a correct pattern and they are inhibited from growing in a chaotic pattern. And this discovery was discounted by the scientific community. And later he discovered the GL scar, and this was initially not embraced by the scientific community. And then he said, what if we could change how the GL scar is inhibiting regeneration? And how would we do it? And at every point, his findings were rejected, and I guess they viewed him as having irrational optimism. But Louise, he was right.
And just months after his very untimely death, which was in January of this year, and we rest, we think about Jerry and say a prayer for his brilliance. But had he lived to see the efficacy of the Nirvgen trial that he is the grandfather of, Harold Punnett, who is the founder, one of the founders of Nirvgen, had a niece who was spinal cord injured, and he was out to seek a cure for her and met up with Dr. Silver. Nirvgen was created, and the trials began with some incredible funding from Wings for Life in particular, and Jerry's brilliance of that glial scar inhibiting nerve regeneration and how it is that a peptide might be injected has indeed proven. And we're about to hear from you what your experience was like. But I'm wondering, when you heard about Nirvgen and then read up on it and found the work of Jerry, Dr. Jerry Silver. What was going through your mind at the time, in addition to your resonating with his path of being discounted over and over and still being very intrepid, staying with his research for years and years?
Well, it's that eureka moment. I mean, Louise, I had gotten fired from 2 nonprofits that I'd worked on for almost a decade, not because I delivered great results, but I guess there were cutbacks. So I was sitting around with time on my hands, and I had begun researching exoskeletons, and I thought, okay, maybe I'll be the exoskeleton girl, and I'll learn about how this is helping us be more mobile. And then on Reddit, actually it was last summer, I learned about this Nirvgen trial. I had a Google alert for spinal cord injury discovery, and Google, you dropped the ball. I never once heard about Nirvgen. It was totally on Reddit. And then learning about the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, I watched videos over and over. I became obsessed with it, and I thought, I'm going up there and I want to be a candidate. I had a video interview first. They began screening the participants. And when I saw Connor and Tim on the screen, I thought maybe I was being punked because they looked like they were in high school.
Yes, indeed, they do. They are wonderful grown-up adults, but they both look very youthful.
Yes, they are. They're full-fledged adults, but they just laughed and said, "No, we're not punking you. We're really here, and this is a real research project." So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go up there. And I went up there with a young friend, Anna, and another friend, Pam, that's a nurse. We spent the night at the Congress Hotel.
And also, just so that folks know, you are coming up at that time from your home in Indiana.
Yes, in Indianapolis, which is called Naptown. So I'm coming up from Naptown to Chicago, the Windy City. And we had all our stuff in garbage bags, and people weren't making eye contact on the street. And I said, well, they probably think we're like these poor homeless people that are journeying to the Congress Hotel late at night. So we're like, okay, we're hicks from the sticks. We're here in the big city. And we spent the night at the Congress, and we went over there in the morning, and it was early. I hadn't had anything to drink.
And Leslie, it was early in the morning. And, some listeners might not know, with someone who is a C5, incomplete injury, just why you needed your friends to come with you, because what kind of help you needed to make that kind of a trip before you entered the Congress.
Yes. I mean, Louise, it really affects every aspect of your life. For example, they took turns driving, and then I can drive, but you automatically lose your driver's license when you're injured, and the requirements vary by state. And in my state, it needs to be set up for a car, and then it should probably be a newer car, which I don't have. So, yes, I was back in Chicago, but it was totally different from my other experiences in Chicago. Someone else is driving, and I get assistance, helping me get out of bed, putting my bra on, getting ready for my day. So, yes, we did these preps. I was so grateful. We went over and we did the screening, and I felt like this is the Hunger Games. I want to be in this trial. Please like me, So I was very excited.
And we know that there were screenings. Blink of an eye, the nonprofit that runs alongside this amazing podcast, we were really blessed to be able to bring the information to many of our families to inform them if it was going to be a right decision for them. And so we became quite familiar with the protocol and what the impulses that they were looking for. And of course, it didn't have anything to do with if someone really liked you or not and how persuasive you would be and how desirous you were or how you could put yourself up and not have them have to pay for you or any of that. It really had to do with the electrical impulses.
Yeah, but I know, but you have that feeling like, please, I want to be on the trial. So, they had trouble drawing blood. I don't have good veins. And I think we did urine and let me see, we did blood pressure and we have a 10-meter walk and the 9-hole peg test. And we did the 10-meter walk in a harness with the tall Evo walker. And I'm really giving it, my best, Louise. And I advanced my right foot past my left foot, but then my left foot kind of meets with my right foot. And then I take another step. I swing my right foot forward and then I meet with the left foot. And it took me 233 seconds to do the 10-meter walk. And then we have the 9-hole peg test.
Now, every spinal cord injured person knows what the 9-hole peg test is, but many other people may not. So you want to explain that briefly?
It looks like one of those silly games they used to have at Cracker Barrel.
Yes, or, in kindergarten when you're learning how to put a peg in a hole.
Yeah, you put a little peg in a hole, and I'm picking up a little tiny peg and I'm trying to swing it around so I can get in a little tiny hole. So I put it against my face with my left hand. And Tim said, I'm asking you not to use your face on the 9-hole peg test.
Yeah. We love improvising, but not for qualifying.
Yeah, we're not allowed to use we're not allowed to bite the peg or just let's do it. And then I can't do it on my right hand. I have a radial nerve injury. I have no wrist flexion, but I'm doing it with my left hand, and that was exciting. And I forget the time, but I believe it was about 240 seconds.
To get one peg in the hole.
No, to complete I did complete it.
Pretty fast.
Yeah, well, being timed, it was always excruciating. I have performance anxiety. I'm like, I'm trying. And, it seems like hours are going by. But we did the electrical testing too. They do a mag stim and they're going to see if you tolerate this experience. And it's like being, like someone banging you on the head. Mm-hmm. It's kind of unpleasant. But it was bearable.
Do you know the purpose of that test that you could share? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they're going to be sending the electrical signal from your brain down your spinal cord to a specific muscle group. And they have to test the amplitude of this signal. And I know that some people, and again, what they were dealing with physically can be different from person to person. Some people, this was the reason they didn't participate, because it wasn't tolerable for them. It may have been extremely painful for them in a way that their pain was greater than the pain of other people who were able to tolerate it because of physical differences. But I was able to tolerate it. And last of all, we did the MRI. The machine was being difficult that day. Pam was waiting outside, and my friend Rod, who's a science writer, he lives in Chicago, and the operator kept bringing me out of the MRI and saying, I have to reboot the system, and then stuffing me back in the MRI. And it was 2.5 hours. And it's oh, wow, I broke the MRI. Louise, what happened? But finally we got out of the MRI, and I was okay, what a day. It was a very intense day.
And, I just think about all the times our son Archer, who's C4 complete, has been in an MRI. And for, most people, they're not in an MRI, let alone multiple times. And that unto itself is scary, if you've got any type of claustrophobia. But spinal cord injured folks just seem to be able to miraculously tolerate them. And so kudos to you. I'm wondering, part of my understanding was they were as patient as the day is long. You could have taken as long as you needed, but were they also doing a high dynamic pinch test for you, or was that part of the 9-hole peg test?
I just remember the 9-hole peg test. They did other assessments, but I have to be honest, I don't remember if we did the pinch test that day.
No,
sorry.
That's all right. It's really just illustrating the battery of, because you're not in the trial yet. This is just, you pass the video assessment. Now you're on site for this assessment. And that's really giving people a sense of just how incredibly thorough this trial was. And just as a footnote, something that you said earlier, we know that this was for folks who had been living with spinal cord injury, acute spinal cord injury, who were chronic, which was defined as 1 to 10 years, and that the assessment was looking for electrical impulses in four limbs, right? 2 legs and 2 hands. But you didn't have to have all 4. It was just 1 in the leg and 1 in the hands. What's exciting is that many people who were screened in, as well as then those who were screened out, had to be able to, like you, Leslie, stand and not necessarily a walk on your own, but be able to stand and take a step. We are about, and I say we because we're bringing this information to our blink of an eye families, because Nirvgen is now conducting the next trial for the acutely injured folks from 20 to 90 days, and they have removed this walking assessment that you had to go through. So it's really helping us to define what is up next. So thank you so much for that illustration. I'm wondering about what a day in the life looked like and what it was like for you when you learned that you qualified, and if you simply stayed and they put you in immediately.
Well, we went home and then we had to figure out, we were not told that day, but it came later. And yeah, that was a really big deal for me, and trying to, what arrangements will have to be made. We stayed at the W, and I had a room and Pam had a room at the W, which is beautiful. It's right there on Lake Michigan, and it was so exciting. But at the time, Louise, even though it's just a block from the Shirley Ryan, I thought that I wouldn't be able to take the cold when Chicago really got cold. This is a 4-month commitment, 3 months of injection, and 4th month of observation. And I thought maybe we're going to Uber when it gets really cold, because I don't think I can handle that. And we were so excited, but Pam was away from her husband, and I was away from my youngest son and my oldest son. We had to make this adjustment. We were driving up from Indianapolis every Sunday night to be on site Monday morning, and then going back on Friday. And then every day I would be, the first 3 months I would be injected, and typically do 1 hour of maintenance exercise, which was OAT, with O being the first day is overground walking in a harness. The next day is an arms day. The third day is treadmill day. And this is really exciting to do therapy, but it was only 1 hour a day. Then we would have testing days where we are going to do assessments, perhaps of the strength of individual muscle groups, or we're going to get a reassessment on the 10-meter walk or the 9-hole peg test. sometimes we had blood work. And then female participants, I had to do, pregnancy test, although I'm in my late 50s, but I understand this crosses the blood-brain barrier. Mm-hmm. And there's just, I don't see any way you could use MVG 291 if you are pregnant, because it will cross any barrier, and we don't know what the effect might be.
Blink of an Eye podcast is sponsored by Blink of an Eye Nonprofit, a nonprofit which originated the first SCI Navigator program in the country for newly injured SCI families by SCI families as an essential national resource for spinal cord injured families in the first days, weeks, and months of SCI crisis when life turns upside down. And few medical teams in the U.S. have SCI expertise or lived experience. The SCI Navigators bring essential support, connections, life expertise, and resources. Blink of an Eye Nonprofit deploys a rapid response HEAL team for ICU bedside support to create an extraordinary experience despite the devastation for SCI families. And a personal SCI navigator for 24/7 support in the first 90 days and throughout the miracle year. Blink of an Eye Nonprofit also provides a multidisciplinary wraparound team and SCI expert medical panel. Stay tuned for their launch of the first National Digital Resource Library, the SCI Playbook, chocked full of essential SCI information and trauma-informed responses for the first hours, days, and months after injury. To find out more, get involved, or to make a donation, visit www.blinkofaneye.org. And you're speaking actually of the peptide injection itself right now.
Yes, MVG 291.
Right. What did you learn about the MVG 291 that might also be of value to listeners and was important to you in terms of its content? We hear the first part, that it does pass the blood-brain barrier, so don't be pregnant. What else did you learn about the quality or content of the MVG 291?
Well, my individual experience, and I did feel I was doing something important and contributing to research. It was very specific what they wanted, like a person injured in the cervical spine who was incomplete, who could take at least one step and had a pincher grip on at least one upper extremity, not suffering from depression or any other ailments. I did not have any medical appliances implanted in me. I had not had Botox in the past 6 months. One nurse said when we found someone that fit the description, it was like finding Cinderella, the shoe fit. So I was really excited about that. But beyond that, I felt like I was getting medical treatment. My body felt better. I felt more like myself. I had a glow up. And when the weather got cold in Chicago, we didn't need to take an Uber because I was much more tolerant of the cold. My thermoregulation greatly improved. And sadly, my dad passed away early on in the trial, but the funeral was not held until the following month. I brought funeral flowers back to the W, and when I smelled them, they had formaldehyde. And I asked Pam, let's throw these away. This is probably not good for us. Let's get rid of it. It was late at night, so she put them out right outside my room. And in the morning, when she came in, I was really dramatic. Oh, my goodness, I can't stand this. I still smell that. Did you really throw it away? And she looked chagrined and said, I don't know how you can smell that, Leslie, but it was late at night and I didn't know where to throw them away. It's right outside the room.
Incredible.
I realized my sense of smell had really improved. In the elevator, I thought, oh, this guy's wearing polo, or this person has Chanel number 5 on. And on the way to the Shirley Ryan, there was somebody that was always smoking a cigar, and we always just missed him. And I thought, my sense of smell has greatly increased, and I really don't mind the cold. In fact, it's okay. And I thought, this is how I used to feel.
Yeah.
This is how I used to feel. And
feeling.
One of the trips we made it back to, we were coming back to Indianapolis. It was in October. And Pam assisted me, I'm going to stand up and turn around and sit on the chair to get out of the car. And it was fall in Indiana, and I could smell the leaves, and it was a little chill, and it was glorious. And it's something that I haven't felt since, the 9 years that I got hurt, and it was back.
Like you could smell autumn.
Yes, and I wasn't in incredible pain from a light fall chill.
Leslie, can we pause on that? So how many weeks had you been receiving the peptide when you began to feel more like yourself and were aware that your thermal regulation was more calibrated, and then this sort of budding sense of, or almost like a, oh my goodness, this heightened sense of smell with pleasurable things as well as, things that can keep us safe, stay away from kinds of things. How long? How many days, weeks, months? I mean, we do know that it's a 4-month trial. Were you into the trial when you began to experience these things?
Well, Louise, actually, that was only 6 or 7 weeks. And up to that point, I was thinking I'm probably in the placebo group. But after that, I'm like, I think I'm receiving the medication, and I didn't even know my sense of smell was affected. I actually thought that I had a normal sense of smell until it was restored. And then I was getting faster and faster on the 10-meter walk. And then in December, the beginning of December, we did the 10-meter walk again. And instead of 233 seconds, I did it in 19 seconds.
Oh, my goodness. And that was about 2 months into it? So you're about at the halfway point?
That was 3 months. It was something that is unexplainable for someone that had been told, you plateaued in 2019, Leslie. I had a therapist, tell me we don't really need for you to get on the treadmill anymore. Do you really think that you can improve? So, yeah, I was told I had plateaued. A therapist said, why get on the treadmill? Do you really think that you can improve? And again, it's this feeling of I'm trying to help you by telling you that your desire to improve is going nowhere and you need to adapt. Wherever you're at right now, you're stuck. And my response, Luis, is I just want to reach my athletic potential. And who really does that? Most people that are able-bodied could probably do a half marathon or marathon. So I am simply wanting to meet my athletic potential, and I have not reached it yet. I haven't reached it yet. And I have been asked by a lot of people, when I share this experience, do I think this will work on complete injuries? And I'm saying I am only someone that received medication. I'm not a scientist or researcher. But we have this thing that we tell people they are complete. And we don't even have the technology to see all the injuries or the potentials within someone's body. And it's a very big statement to say that someone has no potential. It's like saying there are no rabbits in this fruit orchard. Are you absolutely sure that there's no rabbits in this orchard? Would you bet your life on it? And my belief is that there is sparing, and our future might hang by a thread, but we only need a thread to build on. We need to receive medication and allow our bodies to work with it. And I'm kind of amazed the news of this trial hasn't really hit home yet with people.
1 week since release.
Yes, well, in the first time of the human race, they've proven that they have regeneration in chronic injury, and it's undeniable. They have proven it. 100% of the people who received the medication, there was an increase in this specific muscle group in our hands, which it's like laying down the Transcontinental Railroad. No, we did not go from New York to L.A. in 90-some days. We were not ready to dance with stars in 90 days, but we regroup parts of our body. So I believe that we have not seen anything yet. I'm super excited about it. I'm not in the employ of any corporation. I am just someone that received medication and experienced regeneration for the first time, and I'm deeply, deeply grateful not only for myself but for everyone in our spinal cord injury community.
Well, we are so indebted to those who took the risk and had that courage and the faith to step up and say, I want to be part to contribute to research, and then who qualified, because it was like finding a needle in the haystack to find the number of people needed for the cohort. And we just really stumbled into it ourselves because of our families, whom Blink of an Eye nonprofit serves in ICUs across the country, where the trials were happening at the Shirley Ryan. And then, our inquisitive, curious nature to always seek out what information, cutting edge, we might bring to our families. So we didn't have, a horse in the race either. But we do in the sense of your life and all the lives at Blink of an Eye and all of those who are spinal cord injured. We have a big horse in this race because the peptide also, we don't know what is then also to come from it positively over time, but it's not, because it's non-invasive. It's not something that prevents you from participating in other kinds of trials where, like stem cell, it's it. It's one and done. With somebody else's stem cell, you can't participate in other trials because of what's not known. But this Nirvgen peptide, I'm as excited as you are. Some other people that I have heard from, and so now I'm going to ask you a question about your cohort. I'm sure you created some relationships, but I'm hearing that for some, they, like you, are much more tolerant of temperature. And so many who are living with spinal cord injury, being in temperatures less than 70 it's just too cold. And their thermal regulation has really increased, which has huge amounts to do with quality of life, as well as being in social places with other people. People have reported that their libido has increased. They may have had sexual dysfunction, that they're beginning to have sexual dreams, and just feeling more alive sexually, and just from a standpoint of I'm a woman, I'm a man, I'm a human. Did you hear stories of that amongst your cohort, or were you afterwards, or were you asked not to speak of it? So please give us the insight on those kinds of things, if you're willing.
I believe that everybody's healing is going to be idiosyncratic. I believe that what's important now for anyone listening is to get into physical therapy. If your doctor doesn't support and is not up on new developments like MVG 291, find a doctor that is open to advances in medical science. Examine your diet. Be careful of who surrounds you. Don't permit people in your circle that are putting you down and telling you that you cannot advance and that you're not going to be more physically independent. Exert your agency and prepare yourself to take advantage of this medical advancement. But yes, I felt much more alive on this medication, and I was thinking, maybe I'll just, maybe I'll find someone and we'll go out to eat and then we'll say goodbye. And I'm thinking, yeah, I think I'd like to be married. Like, I wake up in the morning and think, why isn't someone here with me, getting me coffee and telling me how cute I am? So, yeah, I felt like I got a glow up, and I felt like my body was happy, and it's like going into a room and the lights were being turned on, and also negative things were being turned down. I've had a lot less neuropathic pain, and this was a very short trial. Now it's really hot outside. I'm much more tolerant in the heat. My sense of smell remains terrific, and I'm still in therapy, and I'm continuing to improve, I think on a slower trajectory, but my stamina has increased. So I do not believe that this whole narrative we were told that wherever you're at right after the injury, or 6 months after the injury, or 1 year after the injury, or whatever timeline they're giving is accurate, and that it's scientifically based. It is not. It is simply, we haven't had any medical therapy up until now. So let's just prepare ourselves as best we can and prime our health and get ready to receive medical treatment, because it is coming.
It is coming. I think you leave us with illuminating for investors that a success of any of these new drugs, products, what are coming into the spinal cord injury marker is not defined by, do they have gait again? Do they walk again? But this quality of life that means so much to people who have been living their lives in a wheelchair. And just how you have lit us up today, Leslie, and with the background to this trial, what it has meant to you. And it sounds as though your strength, your physical strength, may have really increased as well. So clearly the speed that you completed the walk assessment, but your strength as well?
Yes, my strength and stamina have increased. And, I don't know how to describe it, but before, when I was experiencing like a strong emotion, like even laughter, I would have this feeling like my body is approaching a design tolerance, like we are exceeding a boundary. I just would kind of get a feeling of impending doom, like my blood pressure might be going too high, or I really laughed a lot, and now I'm feeling a little sick, or something is upsetting me. And like my system really can't take a lot. And I was trying to be kind of neutral all the time. And my affect may have come across a little flat, but I was doing that out of self-defense. And now I just feel more like myself. Like I just don't have that feeling anymore. Like my physical self is going to be swamped by just basic emotions or responses to everyday things. Before I was getting, like somebody dropped a book and I would get muscle tone. Like I had a hyper exaggerated startle response. And I'm not a scientist. They would do a better job of explaining this, but now I'm really not burying the needle on like a loud noise or a common life event. I just feel more like myself.
Wow. I just want to take that in. You've said it a number of times, and just to put it in light, you feel more like yourself. And that modulation that you and I would suspect so many living with spinal cord injury have to be on constant, subtle, but constant alert to not go outside, almost like the cosine wave of too much of anything, including laughter, to keep everything within those boundaries because you don't want a very sensitive system to be set off with high spikes of high blood pressure, autonomic dysreflexia. And to now have those boundaries so much wider and feeling like yourself is huge. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, you're welcome, Louise, and I love you. I've just known about you only for a few days or weeks, and I don't know how I escaped knowing about you and your wonderful podcast and people. But thank you for seeing that we who have spinal cord injuries are still human beings, and for your love and care. I really appreciate it, and it makes me want to be out there more too.
You already are. You are out there in this moment. And to think that those doctors and hospital staff where you were said that you would need to live the rest of your life in a nursing home, which we haven't talked about, but I know you had shared with me briefly. And you did live in a nursing home. And here you are now, reminding us all, whether we are professionals in the medical spinal cord injury field or whether we are humans interacting with others who have spinal cord injury, there is a rabbit in that fruit orchard. Thank you so much, Leslie, for you and your life. And a toast to Dr. Jerry Silver in gratitude to the scientists and the scientific team at Nirvgen, and for you and your courage.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sending love to you. Thank you for joining us for part 2 of our special breaking news story about Nirvgen's NBG 291. Leslie Fuller's story gives us a powerful, personal look into what it means to live at the intersection of spinal cord injury and scientific innovation. Her willingness to share the raw truth of her journey and the hope she's found along the way adds something vital to the conversation around healing and regeneration. As insights from the findings from the NBG 291 trial continue to unfold, voices like Leslie's remind us that breakthroughs don't just happen in labs. They happen in lives. We'll continue to follow this evolving story. Until then, thank you for listening and stay tuned. Together, we are raising the vibration for healing. Life can change in the blink of an eye. See you next week when we talk with trauma and resilience psychotherapist Eliza Chamblin, an episode every human on a path of healing needs to hear. If you're not already subscribed to Blink of an Eye podcast, please do so wherever you stream your podcasts. Just hit the subscribe or follow button. It's free. And tell your friends. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider a charitable donation in any amount to Blink of an Eye nonprofit at blinkofan.org. Your generosity helps us operate the only SCI Navigator support program for newly injured SCI families by SCI families in the country. We understand spinal cord injury trauma. Sending love. Life can change in the blink of an eye.
You've been listening to Blink of an Eye. We ask that you share this with anyone who may need inspiration, a lift, or who may relate. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to Blink of an Eye on our website, blinkofaneyepodcast.com, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Blink of an Eye podcast is sponsored by Baltimore Mediation. For over 30 years, Baltimore Mediation has been the choice for clients nationwide, seeking breakthroughs in their disputes and changes for their conflicts and complicated interactions at work, in their families, their boards of directors, and their organizations. Baltimore Mediation provides tailored intervention with face-to-face mediation and facilitation from a relational approach, leading with a belief in human capacity and resilience, despite the negative experience of conflict and crisis. Relational mindset, relational outcome. You can learn more at baltimoremediation.com.